Hello and welcome back to the Excedo Playback Podcast, the podcast discussing industry news, trends, and tech advancements in the streaming and OTT industry. Today, we'll be talking about the current state and future state of monetization within video and OTT. The shift in priorities for streaming services from subscriber growth to profitability and retention has been one of the core changes in the industry over the last couple of years. Who better to discuss these changes and what's coming next than our two guests? Joining us today is Vijay Sajja, founder and CEO of Evergent. Vijay, thanks for joining.
Happy to do this, Neil and Michael. Yeah.
And also joining us today is Michael Lance, co-founder and CEO of Excedo. Michael, thank you for coming on. Good to see you again.
Well, thanks for having me, Neil.
Okay, well, let's jump right into it. So first question here for Vijay. How can OTT services balance monetization and user experiences to try and maximize revenue, but while focusing still on retaining subscribers?
Yeah. So monetization is important, right? And user experience, both are important, right? So when you think of monetization, giving user not only the various options, right? The ultimate in monetization is really personalizing, coming up with an offer that Neil would want. And they're presented to you, and Neil would say, "Oh my God, that's exactly what I wanted. How did they know?" Right? So that's ultimate. While we get there, it's really about eliminating friction for signing up. Users signing up. Right? It's really that involves not only coming up with the various options for monetization, the people that can sign up, products, packages, promotions, how that interface is designed, how easy it is to navigate, how easy it is for people to look at this. So both, they have to be balanced, right? So and so that's why and again, we as Evergent, we are good at providing that flexibility. For example, like Excedo, they're good at really creating that user interface that's less friction and ease of use, both for onboarding and offboarding, right? So it's onboarding is important, but the regulations now require companies to make sure that offboarding is as easy. It should be as easy as to sign up, and clarity and all the terms and conditions, but it should be as easy to sign off, right? So that's kind of the latest. So you kind of have to balance both.
You talk about how it has to be easy. Michael, how can obviously front-end and user experiences affect user choices when it comes to subscription? With keeping that in mind, right? The easiness is a key part of it.
So I think monetization in general is a topic which I'm truly fascinated by, and I'm taking a step back and look at monetization in general for streaming service or any subscription services. So there is an underlying problem that the high users, the very engaged users, don't necessarily pay more than the low engaged users, right? In fact, you can argue that you make less money from the really engaged and high volume users than from the low engagement users that you're just collecting the money, right? And I think that's a fundamental problem in the industry where you would like to make more money out of very engaged users. So I'm very pleased to see the emergence of these hybrid business models where you add new types of monetization options on top of a base subscription package. And in fact, I think the future road here to really figure out the best way of monetizing a consumer base is to figure out, can you create, in an easy way, of course, multiple tiers to make sure that you make the most money out of the consumers who are the most engaged and most interesting in your service. Ultimately, I think that sort of upselling strategy on the consumers is a key element to sort of long-term strategy for any video service. I think that's something people tend to forget. The pursuit of ease of use or ease of starting the subscription may cloud the picture of how you want to monetize to make a maximum monetization out of your subscriber base in the long run. And I think that sort of balance between sort of customer acquisitions in an easy way and then long-term sort of return on that sort of customer is something you need to consider. I don't know, Vijay, do you see your customers, are they primarily concerned about acquisitions and reducing churn, or do they actually look actively on how you maximize the average revenue per user over time?
Overall, what we are seeing, and I think something Neil said early on, is really the push to profitability in the last couple of years. Everybody wants to run a healthy business, right? So bottom line, at the end of the day, the business should be making money, right? So there's no point in selling same thing if you're losing money per unit, right? So customers are definitely paying attention to this, and something you described, Michael, just now is really, they have to have a plan, okay? What's the top of the funnel look like? Once they come in, okay, you're attracting with low price offer or free offer, but you got to have a plan in how you're going to convert top of the funnel into something paying, right? What other offers you have, what is the journey of the user, that you have compelling content, they view something, they like the service. Fundamentally, the service has to be good. It's all about providing value to the consumer, right? And expanding that value footprint over time, right? So it's are you creating value to the consumer? Do you have a design in place that over time you're actually going to increase the value you're providing to the consumer, right? So, for example, one of our customers, they started with freemium, let's call it, right? Ad supported freemium. They had a lot of top of the funnel, and they come up with some creative ideas, experimentation on transactional VOD, bundles of content, right? Now they have all three models, pay-per-view, ad-based monetization, and subscription, right? How do you combine this in a holistically, but you're measuring yourself on a monthly basis? Are you making money at the bottom line? What's the lifetime value of the subscriber, right? It's it used to be, several years ago, that it's acquire as many users as you can, right? So now it's more of, they still want to acquire, to answer your question, they still want to acquire customers, they still want to retain customers, but do this in a judicious way, in a smart way, and then keep measuring the lifetime value of the subscriber, and stay focused on your business. What is your core product? Is the product of being value to the population of your users, right? And are you paying attention to, over time you're going to increase that value, right? Then and retain. That's how you build a good business. Yeah.
So both of you mentioned at some point here just the different layers of tiers that are much more common now for different services, right? There's potentially there's a free tier, there's a hybrid ad monetization, and then there's the premium tier. How do you foresee some of these subscription tiers or the pricing model changing in the next few years? Is there going to be other innovations on that front?
I think, so I don't think fundamentally they're going to change, and you'll see these models existing, uh, but how they're going to use data, personalization, and prediction, even from offering the plans and products to the consumer based on what you know about the consumer, um, and then even pricing, coming up with the right pricing strategies. AI is going to change a lot more in terms of learning, over time, and fine tuning based on what you're doing and the market feedback. That's going to change a lot. I mean, AI is going to be a game changer, both for acquisition and also retention. We feel, and the tools would remain the same. Then the freemium, ad based tier, different types of ad loads, subscriptions, and then do you want to combine subscriptions with some kind of a pay-per-view type of match, and offer discount for pay-per-view if you have a subscription. So all these things, they also feed off of each other, right? While they are feeding off of each other, uh, you are measuring what is actually working, right? When I say feed off of each other, some people may be interested in a boxing match, right? When they're coming in, then I say, hey, if you have the subscription, you actually get a discount on this, right? So we do 6 matches, or it could be online, offline. Okay, we work with the New York Yankees and Madison Square Garden. Okay, if you actually sign up for our membership, we can actually give you a discount for events in the stadium, right? So things like that. So they're going to experiment with all of these things, but use data very intelligently. So that's kind of what we're going to see more and more in the coming future.
So I'm no expert in sort of various subscription innovations, but I have one thing which is sort of a bit of a pet idea of mine, which I normally throw around, and that's differentiation on release windows. So I'm seeing that it is more premium. I mean, let's take Netflix that everyone has a relationship with, right? Let's say that you have a basic tier when you're getting all the new content 1 month after release. But if you want to get the new content at the time of release, you need to have a more premium tier. So this obviously could work for anything which has sort of a sense of urgency in consumption. So maybe not documentaries or something like that, but you can certainly see it for reality TV. You can see it for drama. Sports doesn't really work because it doesn't have any value sort of a week after the initial broadcast. But for some content categories, I think that there could be an option to have a low-end tier for sort of more or less library content, and you can have more premium tier for sort of the newest releases. And I haven't really seen that. I would be interested in seeing experiments on how this could be a way to differentiate between sort of premium and basic tier.
I think it's a good idea, and we will likely see what you're proposing, Michael, and um, especially with some of these guys are creating their own content, right? And Netflix would be in a position to do it. Some of the bigger players would be in a position to do what you're talking about. For others, it'll be a little difficult, because content acquisition is the cost of acquisition is the big issue, right? And the pay-per-view, in terms of new releases being available on a pay-per-view basis, we are seeing a little bit of that now. In terms of a new movie comes on, it's also available for streaming simultaneously as theatrical release and things like that. And so those we may see first, but those would have to be priced differently, meaning you got to pay $30 to watch a movie or whatever.
Right, but that seems to me like that's a tiny
Right.
market. The people are willing to pay $30 for a movie
Yeah.
at home. I don't know, but it just seems like a tiny market. But on the other hand, from a marketing perspective, maybe there is a big value that you can actually you get the rights to communicate that premium content in your sort of marketing, and that would add some value as well to the streaming service.
No, definitely. I think sports also, we cannot rule it out, meaning that, say Apple, if you look at all the big boys, Apple, Amazon, they are investing in sports, but they are also looking at as a driver. A live event would be a driver to bring in subscribers. Those normally they may not have come, right? And so, can they price it? Right now, they're offering it for free, right? Can they price it and then maybe discount it if you are an existing subscriber, things like that. So some of these things we are talking about, I think we'll see them, in the coming months and years.
So I have a question for you, Vijay, which I've been curious about. So we're seeing sort of the rise of more ad-funded services, and we see fast channels being launched all over the
Right.
place. Do you see a material cannibalization on sort of premium services, on subscriptions, that people actually transition to sort of they actually terminate the normal subscription and move to a fast service instead? Or is this in addition to the normal subscriptions? My personal view is that it's probably in addition,
Yeah.
because it may not be the same
Yeah.
users,
Yeah.
and you may add this on top, but
Right.
I don't know. I would be curious to hear
Yeah,
about your
I kind of
experience.
agree with you, and also the content, the type of content that's going into the fast channels is a little bit different than what you would get, for example, in a Netflix. The stuff you get on Netflix, you'll only get on Netflix, right? And you're not going to be able to get one of these fast channel MVPD services, right? Whether it's Tubi or anything else, right? So they fundamentally they seem to be different type of content, right? It's of course it's entertainment and TV, and if somebody is looking for just a time pass, okay, it's there, okay. So, but if they want a specific content, popular shows, and it all depends on if some of these premium streaming services, if they're not producing compelling content, then what you're saying may happen, right? Cannibalization, people drifting to the ad supported models and fast channels, and because they don't have to pay, right? But as long as these guys keep up the quality of their product, and they keep producing similar type of quality in the coming years, both would coexist, right? Some people, for example, I don't watch much TV at all, so, but whatever I watch, it'll be probably one of those, premium streaming services, and so yeah.
Do you see any possibility for the fast concept to go premium, which means that you have sort of that linear
Yeah.
experience? You package up streaming content in a linear experience, but it's not free
Mm,
and it's not ad supported.
yeah.
Do you see that there is a market for
So
that, or is that sort of you're not targeting the right consumer?
yeah. Some of these guys are thinking about it. Similarly, the likes of Netflix thought about advertising, and creating a package with some advertising. So the fast channel guys are also thinking about, is there a way I can actually start selling something, actually making money, right? So we haven't seen any yet, but I can tell you that they're contemplating, right?
Yeah, then we're back to cable
Yeah,
TV,
yeah.
more or less,
Yeah.
right? You create a bundle of channels. Anyway, it's interesting to see everything comes around.
Yeah, there's always cycles. It's fascinating, though. One of the things that kind of comes up again and again here is that insights are incredibly
Hmm.
important, right? To understand what your subscriber base is doing and how they're doing it and what they're doing is incredibly important. So, what role does analytics play in your sort of value proposition, or what do you find is the most important when it comes to providing insights for your customers?
Yeah, analytics are the key. See, you kind of have to measure yourself. How the business is going, right? Fundamentally, if you have different products, you want to know how each product is doing. If you're in different regions, you want to see, by region how it's doing, and the demographics, and so really slicing and dicing of the data. That's like table stakes, and bare minimum. We really need to have good platform that gives you a good view into various aspects of your business, right? The second thing, with the advent of AI, and all the models we have now, is really, can you bring in what the various points in the subscriber life cycle. For example, we track 60 different events in a subscriber life cycle, right? At each of those events, can you use the data to predict something you can do in terms of a value you can create for the business, right? And it's all about what business value you can create based on the insights you have, right? So that's going to be really the next wave. You have the data. Using all the AI models, can you create business value, right? And also, also create value for the consumer, right? Meaning that expanding the value footprint for the consumer over time, right? So that's going to be, we're just starting. Many people, you know, almost everybody has a AI strategy, right? But we'll see more of that in the coming months and years. Really creating that, beyond analytics, I call it, right? Using AI and prediction. The third thing I'll say is also anomaly detection, right? So this is where what I mean by that is that, your business is going in a certain way, but something fundamentally changed. Can you detect anomalies before they become trends, right? And again, this is where, data, knowing the business domain, and also using AI, right? Um, the payments, uh, failure rate has gone up in Sweden today. It's a failure rate is about 10, but today it's actually 30, right? You know, somebody needs to be alerted. It's almost like alerting somebody, hey, something is wrong. You go, take a look at it. So that anomaly detection is also something, we are investing as a company, but we see a lot of potential with all the tools we have, unlike before, that you can actually, in real time, detect anomalies and react to certain things that are changing, right? Could be some malfunction issue, could be something actually changed, could be the payment gateway you're using maybe having some issues, or whatever it is. The sooner you can take corrective action.
Yeah, that's great. Good to hear, and that leads me to start thinking. So Axido has our observability
Right.
platform, Axido Insights, but that's primarily from a technical observability, and we don't really have the same sort of subscription insights that you have. But we should probably have a discussion about how we can combine that
Yeah.
to create sort of alerting systems for our
Right.
customers. So I think that's a good idea. I have a question regarding sort of your insights and what you're measuring, and that's, in your opinion, I mean, every customer, they look at sort of KPIs like churn or average revenue per user or conversion rates and so on. What is the one metric that you always find that customers don't look at enough? What is your recommendation to the listeners here in terms of what they're normally forgetting in terms of what they should be looking at in terms of key metrics?
I think lifetime value of a subscriber, right? I think everybody understands it, but really measuring, it's a tricky, not it's a kind of a tricky thing to measure, because you have customers coming and going, and you have churn, and but really keeping track of that lifetime value of a user, and then how much you're spending to acquire the user, right? And per unit, are you making money, right? The unit economics, I think if you were to force me to pick one, I would call it unit economics, right? Do you have the right unit economics, right? Are you trending to the right unit economics? You're actually selling something, and the simplest term is you're selling a widget. Is the widget making money for you, right? If it's not making money for you, are you on a trend? 6 months from now, a year from now, you're actually start going to make money, and the business is going to be
Right.
valuable, right? So that's what we see becoming front and center for various lot of providers in the market, that they want to create a profitable business, right? So it's market is demanding it, Wall Street is demanding it,
Yeah.
and so yeah.
So I would absolutely agree with you there, and I think one of the
Yeah.
challenges that I see, and maybe your platform would be a good starting point with that, is obviously the lifetime value. It's easy to get focused on the average lifetime value, when in reality you will have certain customers who have an extremely low lifetime value and others who have an extremely high lifetime value. And I think those need to be treated in terms of a customer strategy in different ways.
Yes.
You have customers with lifetime value of 0 because they never leave the free tier. They stay there for 30 days and they never convert. That's a 0 lifetime value customer. How do you create sort of any value out of those? Because you still have the customer acquisition cost. And then you have the people who sort of never leave. They just continue to subscribe and never call customer support or anything, right? That's the fantastic customer. And I think it is important to do like a customer cohort analysis in these different groups, and you have different customer strategies for different cohorts.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I've been, I started my journey as with this whole sector in the cable industry. One of my mentors shared the story with me. An operator in Canada, and they had this strategy. This was many, many years ago, 20 plus years ago, that they actually incentivized their call center employee, right? For example, a customer dials in, and when the call center employee opens the screen, it actually tells the agent color coded. Is it a red customer, green customer, yellow customer? They color coded. Red customer means that you're actually losing money on this customer, right? They call off and they complain, and so they actually incentivize the CSRs to encourage them to go to the competitor, right? And over time, what happened was that these are publicly traded companies. The metrics for this company are looking much better in terms of their unit economics and money they're making. And I don't know how real it was, this story, but he's told me that this actually happened, that they incentivize so the customer calls and he's complaining and say, I'm sorry, customer, but here's the 800 number, for the other company, they may be able to help do better for you, right? So to your point, right, it's there may be a section of customers that, that'll never be profitable for you, right? Where do you want to focus? I guess it's true for any business in a way, right? And it's really, you find customers that value what you provide, then it's a long-term relationship, right? So that's I don't think anybody's thinking to that extent at this point, but that's a valid point.
Yeah, and I think that this is something that we obviously don't have the data. You guys have the data for us to make the analysis. But I think what we're preaching is always that in the UX, you will need to consider different way of addressing different customers. It is difficult, maybe impossible, to create sort of one customer experience that fits everyone, right? Then you risk losing people on the way, and you need to consider sort of how you can address different customers. If you're focused only on sort of conversion and upselling, maybe that will change something for some customers and will be really good for other customers. And I think that strategy, that customer strategy, identifying the different cohorts and defining which metrics you really would like to improve. Are you improving, in the case we talked about earlier, the red customers? Would you like to turn them into yellow customers or green customers? Or would you like to get rid of them altogether? Those are two different strategies. You may need to implement different ways of addressing the problems. And each business just need to create that customer strategy. And I think this is where Accedo can come in and support, obviously. Yeah. Even if we don't have the data and the tools to manage the subscriptions, which you have, I think, to figure out what to do with that data is a key element.
Yeah.
Super interesting. There's always a bunch of different elements to consider, whether it's direct monetization through your subscribers or, like you said, these other opportunities outside of just that flow by your support services. One thing I noticed Michael mentioned was, of course, is that personalization is still extremely important to make sure that you're keeping users interested and active in your service. When we talk about just generally operating an OTT service, I'm going to ask both of you from your lenses. Obviously, we've got monetization and we have user experience. What are some aspects of operating an
Mm.
OTT service that are hypercritical but are often not considered?
Yeah, I think what we see is um, planning for success is something sometimes overlooked, right? Everybody's gung ho on launching the service. You launch the service, and few instances we have seen that the service really takes off, right? And it's growing. It went beyond what they thought it would grow, right? It brings a different kinds of challenges. When a service grows, when you're in multiple countries, um, the scale and flexibility is what we see they often overlook, right? Taking sports as an example, it's a live event. If you haven't planned for high success and scale, then at the beginning of the live event, you run into issues of people not being able to log in and sign in, and you see some of this stuff in news sometimes, right? It's a scale is one thing. The second thing is uh, business complexity, right? As you grow, the tools you need to grow from there, right? It requires bit more thinking because you're competing for users with other businesses, right? Similar businesses, right? So you got to have the amount of tools you need, the flexibility you need for products, packages, promotions, and different ways of acquiring users. A lot of these streaming providers, if you really think about it, they need to constantly acquire users because there's an inherent churn, right? So it's to do that after a certain point, you need to have flexibility and really insights and working with the right partners, right? And that give you that flexibility so that based on market feedback you're able to adjust and change things, right? So that's kind of what I see more often is planning for success and really thinking about flexibility you need not today but tomorrow, right? And then do you have the right infrastructure in place, right strategy in place to handle the volume that's going to come in, right? So
Yeah, agree completely. I think that's something that I would also say. But since Neil asked me about sort of looking
mm,
from my lens, I want to provide sort of a view on what we're facing in many cases. Is that customers, especially not mature customers, they tend to assign too much of their budget
mm,
to the initial launch and too little for sort of ongoing operations. And we're typically sort of always preaching to the customers, remember that whatever you do, there will have to be an evolution of the service. The likelihood that you will hit all the nails on the head from day one is very low. Imagine that this is a service that will evolve over time as your content portfolio evolves, as your competitors evolve, as your customer base, the requirements from them evolve, or as the technical evolution evolves, whether it's operating system upgrades or whether it's new functionality or legal requirements that you need to adopt. So in many cases, customers tend to run out of budget after the initial launch. So that operational excellence, if you will, to keep running the service in a good way is something people tend to forget, especially greenfield opportunities.
I appreciate both of you coming on. Thank you very much. Really enjoyed the conversation. Before we wrap up, Vijay, is there anything else that you'd like to say? Anything exciting or new coming from Evergent?
well, it's great to be with you. Thanks for inviting me to this podcast. And a big focus for us this year is we call it AI flywheel for our customers. It's the Evergent AI flywheel, right? So how do we continue to increase the momentum for our customers, right? I mentioned the 60 different events we track during the subscriber life journey. Now, how do we create business value? We're not going to tackle all 60 different events at the moment, but really big focus areas are acquisition and retention. In both those cases, what is the meaningful impact we can make So we are, that's a big focus we're making very good progress in that, in building that flywheel. We want to help our customers win at their game, right? What tools we can bring to bear. Over the years, we onboarded over 900 million users onto our platform. So we have a lot of data. For AI to work, you need to have data. A lot of this data is anonymized. We have those insights, and so really for AI prediction to work. So I'm really excited about that. The impact we can make to our customers with this. Yeah.
Vijay, thank you for joining. Really appreciate it. Michael as well, thank you so much. Really enjoyed your insights. And again, have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
That's all for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. Big thank you to Vijay and Evergent for joining. It was very interesting to hear about the different aspects to consider when it comes to monetization and how things are changing. A big thank you as well to Michael Lance for spending some time later in his evening joining us and chatting as well. As always, if you have any questions, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn or send us an email at playback.podcast@excedo.tv. That's all for this time. Thanks.